Okay, here we are. I was very reluctant to do this video because about a week ago, I released a 60-second review of the Superman movie. And man, I got a lot of freaking hate. Some support, but a lot of freaking hate from people. And I figure I expand on that video because a lot of people read me the wrong way. My video ended up going viral on TikTok, and then I released it here on my YouTube channel. The comments became so bad on my TikTok that I just turned off my comments. I was like, enough is enough. I don't want to hear from people anymore about this movie, judging me on a movie they haven't even seen yet, and judging me on if I'm a Snyder bro or not. So let's get this out the way. I am not a Snyder bro, and I am not a DC fanboy. I am not even a critic at all. If you guys watch my channel, you guys know that I seldom do movie reviews. The last movie review that I did was of Pattinson's Batman. And the reason why I did a review of that, because I was passionate about that Batman. And, well, you heard my views on that. My views on that Batman was pretty controversial as well. And I got a lot of hate on that as well. But let me explain to you guys. First and foremost, before we get into the review, I am a Christopher Reeve fan. First and foremost, that was my first Superman. It was a little bit before my time. Obviously, you can tell by the gray and white hair on my face that I've been around for a while, and I've seen a lot of movies in my lifetime. And I'm trying to make this quick because I don't want to make this a 20-minute video talking about this movie, because if you guys have seen other people's reviews, then you know. If you don't watch the shills and you don't watch the DC fanboys, you're not going to get an honest review. Now, first and foremost, I didn't I didn't hate this movie. I didn't like it. I don't hate this movie. Uh the actor who plays Superman, David Corn Sweat, I thought he was really great. I really underestimated him. I thought he was going to be a crappy Superman, and he really took me by surprise. Um when I first saw the suit, I thought it was I thought it was baggy pajamas. I didn't like it. Over time, as I watched it more and more, and as the suit got dirtier throughout the movie, I liked the suit even more. I had the same problem with Henry Cavill's, Superman suit. Um, when they didn't have the red underwear, that really bothered me. For some reason, that really bothered me. But when I saw the movie, I was like, okay, I was able to get over it. Um, that was about the only thing that was really good about this movie, was the actor playing Superman. It had its moments. The action scenes were really good. The special effects, man, this is the problem, not only with the Superman movie, but with comic book movies overall. And listen, I know this is a comic book movie. You have to have special effects in it. But this was a special effect extravaganza, man. And it's just, filmmakers have become so lazy nowadays when it comes to special effects. It's just, when you look at Superman and you look at the practical effects that was used back then, yeah, they're a little bit outdated. But when Christopher Reeve is going flying up into the air, yeah, he's being propped up with cables, right? There's somebody behind the scenes, using cables to, swoop him up into the air. That could have benefited in this movie, meaning that when the actor Superman, David Cornsweet, is flies up in the air. Listen, you could have easily done that with a practical effect and then later added the CGI. You know what I mean? It just, there were some, the reason why I bring that up is because there were some scenes where you just didn't need to add all these, CGI effects and digital Superman. One of those scenes was the kaiju scene. I felt like it was a cool special effect, but I felt like, they should have just took it old school and put a guy in a freaking kaiju costume, and and put a digital small Superman going around this guy, because it could have worked as well. And if you think that's ridiculous, you just go back and, watch Ghostbusters 2, and you see the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. It was actually a guy in a costume, and it was a miniature city, you know. And Stay Puft Marshmallow Man was walking through the city while there was a guy in it, and then special effects were later added to that movie. And that's one of the main reasons why that movie still holds up and the effects still hold up to this day, because they use practical effects. Jurassic Park is another movie, where the effects still hold up. Half of that movie is practical effects and special effects. Like a lot of those dinosaurs were practical effects and robotics. And I feel like today's movies uses too much special effects. And at times when I was watching a Superman movie, I felt like I was watching Captain Marvel, because it's just they're using special effects when you don't even need to use special effects, because it's just lazy. Especially with the Justice Gang as well. We'll get to that in a moment. Actually, we'll get to that right now. The Justice Gang is just here's my problem with the Justice Gang. All of the actors did a great job, but it kind of reminded me of going back to Black Adam, and when they introduced the characters in Black Adam, like Doctor Fate and Hawkman and the other characters, is there was no backstory behind that. And you're watching Black Adam and like, wait, where did these characters come from? How are they a part of this universe? How are they a part of Black Adam's universe? How are they a part of Superman's universe? And I felt the same way watching this movie with the Justice Gang. I'm like, oh, okay, these characters, there's no backstory, they're just here. You know what I mean? And listen, to somebody who's not a DC fan, I'm not saying me personally, but people are going to go to the movies to watch Superman. They know nothing about Guy Gardner, Green Lantern. They know nothing about Hawk Girl. They know nothing about Mr. Terrific. And you're kind of throwing it at people like we're expected to know who these people are. And I think it's kind of ignorance on James Gunn's behalf, because yeah, he's familiar with the universe, and a lot of these DC fanboys are familiar with this universe because they read the comics, but to a casual Superman fan, you don't know who these people are. And with all the storylines going on, and it was all a bit convoluted. And speaking of special effects, you talk about Crypto, and it's just, man, James Gunn is so good at digital animals. Rocket Raccoon from Guardians of the Galaxy is a perfect example. It's just, I feel like, well, first off, Crypto didn't look nothing like he did in the comics. Maybe there was another comic adaptation of Superman where Crypto looked different, but I felt like they could have just used a regular dog, right? A realistic dog. And then when it was time to do the special effects with the dog, they do the special effects, like with the humans, with Superhuman, with Superman doing the human, thing, and then switching over and him flying, and then him being turned into a special effect. This is what I mean by being lazy. Like, you could have had like a realistic dog that made it realistic. And the reason why I'm saying this is because it almost felt like there were so many special effects in this movie. It almost felt like a cartoon. Like, there was so much shit going on. It was just, it wasn't as there was some points that where it just wasn't believable. And specifically a Lex Luthor scene where shit is going off behind him, and he doesn't even flinch, like nothing is happening. And the same thing with Superman as well. Some of the scenes are beautifully done, special effect wise, but it's just the overuse of special effects, man. It takes away the realness of the movie. Um, let's see, what else can I talk about? The Justice Gang. I talked about Crypto. All the other characters in this movie. People who are not familiar with the Superman universe are not going to get. I said this in my review last week, my 60-second review, that it almost feels like a Superman animated cartoon, and people are like, "Oh yeah, animated cartoon, so that means it's comic book accurate. Thanks for the review." With the snarky attitude, and it's just like it's like that is not as good as that. For those who have seen maybe Superman Unlimited, that's what it kind of reminded me of. If you've never seen that, if you've never seen Superman Unlimited, go watch it because it's way better in my opinion. If you're looking for a really good Superman um, movie, character, show, whatever you want to call it, and I just felt like, and one thing I didn't like about not Superman but Clark Kent, and I know they're one person, but I almost felt like Clark Kent's personality was kind of, you know, interfering with Superman's personality, and Superman's personality was kind of interfering with Clark Kent's personality. Meaning, when was being Superman, I almost felt like there was some Clark Kent there, and when Clark Kent was, being Clark Kent, I almost felt like there was a Superman within that Clark Kent. Specifically, there's a scene with him and Lois where he essentially Clark Kent was upset about the bad publicity Superman was getting through social media, and I'm just like, I don't understand. Lois Lane already knows you're Superman. Why are you being so upset? It's not something that Superman would do. He would not be upset over social media. I I got a lot of hate for, last week for posting a 60-second review of Superman. I didn't give a shit what people said about me. Why would Superman care? And this is the one thing I kind of disliked about the Superman, is he was a little bit too emotional. And I understand, in the comics there is an emotional, Superman, but it's kind of like Superman is not a human being. I read somewhere in the comment section of another video, it's like, Superman is a real nice, pleasant human being. He's not a human being. He's an alien. He's an illegal alien that's not even of this earth. And it's just, if you're playing an alien that is not human, why are you having human emotions? And I understand he grew up around human beings, and this is who Superman is, but why are you getting emotional over social media? It's just mind-boggling. It's just like, if I was Superman and if people were talking bad about me on social media, you know what I would be doing? I'd be flying up in the air, flicking off everybody. Fuck you. Go fuck yourself. That's just me. I know this is Superman and you can't do that because for this was specifically made for family, right? Was specifically made for kids. And not to say that adults can't enjoy it, because I did. But I felt like this was James Gunn approach. Make it for people who can enjoy it from 7 to 70, right? Because it's all about the money. You got to get more people in the theater. You got to be able to sell merchandise. You got to be able to sell toys. And, sometimes I often wonder, not only with James Gunn, but just with the overall tone of movies, and producers and directors, do they know who their core audience is? And their core audience is guys like me and you, the age range between 25 and 50. This is who you're selling the movie for. And I at times I feel like they disrespect, that demographic, and they try to do something completely different to where it doesn't relate to us. And listen, I am very understandable. I try to relate to everybody, but when you're doing something that just doesn't make any sense, and that is not going to be relatable to your core audience, because you're trying to grasp or get that other audience, whether it be a specific race of people or a specific age of people. Listen, I'm all for inclusion, but at times they do it to their own to their own what's the word I'm looking for? Destruction, I guess. I guess I was going to say, I was looking for another word that made sense, but I feel like, you know, James Gunn, specifically when he's making this movie, I feel like he shoots himself in the foot, you know, time and time again, because when it's time to get serious in this movie, here comes one of these freaking jokes, these James Gunn jokes that you would see in Guardians of the Galaxy, where just kind of just pops out of nowhere, and you're just like, Was that really necessary? Did you have to break up, the serious moment with a joke that didn't land, that didn't make any sense, that wasn't funny? And I just felt like, you know, despite how you feel about Man of Steel, I honestly felt like they could have just cast Henry Cavill in this movie, and just continue on with the DCU instead of trying to reboot it. You know what I mean? And I know Henry Cavill is old and he's in his 40s, and a lot of people say he doesn't have the range. If you watched his movies, he does have that range, and I know they were trying to go into a different direction, but I felt like you could have just continued on with the DC universe instead of trying to restart it over. And if you had Cavill in this movie, you know you probably would have made both sides happy, the Gunn universe and the Snyder bros happy at the same time. You know what I mean? um Not to take away anything from this actor, because he did a great job. You know, there was just some scenes with him, you know, and I know this was intentional, where he say these weird things like "by golly" and and shit like people would say back in the 50s, and that was his intention, because that was Gunn's intention, because he was trying to bring back the 50s Superman, and the 60s, 40s and 50s Superman, just to make it appealing, like Leave It to Beaver, so the 70-year-olds can understand what's going on. But at the same time, you have these characters in the movie that are of this generation, and you had this one annoying chick who's taking selfies, and it's just kind of all over the place. And it's just like, okay, who is your main core? Who are you trying to fan service? And honestly, James Gunn is trying to fan service so many people, specifically the DC fanboys, because, like, to harbor back what I was saying before about already having this universe exist. Like, this is not an origin story. This is not a Superman origin story. This is not a Justice Gang origin story. This is just picking up where the comics left off. And if you didn't read the comics, then you don't know what the hell's going on. And that's what I mean about you know James Gunn's ignorance. This is specifically made for DC fanboy comic book guys, and not everybody's going to get it. And so, you know to me, it just kind of doesn't make any sense, because if you're trying to make this for 7-year-olds and 70-year-olds, they're going to be lost as well, because you have this James Gunn has this full knowledge in this catalog of DC knowledge and stories of Superman, and of all of his allies and his adversaries. And to a typical Superman fan going to see this movie, they're going to get lost, and especially when you crowd it with special effects and storylines here and there, and a Lex Luthor, which is just kind of, you don't really know his intentions, because you don't really know who he is. He's kind of confused and kind of lost in the movie. One thing I can say about the actor, Nicholas Hoult, I believe, is actually he did a good job. Me being a DC fan, I already know who Lex Luthor is, and I know his backstory. And I can say one thing for sure is he definitely did a better job than Jesse Eisenberg, and Kevin Spacey. Was he as good as Gene Hackman? No, no. Gene Hackman is just one of the greatest actors of all time, and Christopher Reeve, like I said, will always be my Superman. But you know, when when you have all this going on, and if you're not a DC fan, if you're not a DC fanboy, regardless if you're a Snyder bro or if you're a Gunn fan, you're kind of lost in this convoluted, and I don't want to say mess, because there was a lot of good things in this movie. It was just kind of convoluted chaos within this movie. And I because of that, I didn't really like it. I didn't think it was great, but I didn't hate it. I'm somewhere in the middle. And I didn't expect this video to go on for 20 minutes, but here we are. And I'll leave it at that. And I'll give my review. I'll give it, I'm being generous. And I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10, 6.8 out of 10, really. I felt like there could have been so much more. James Gunn could have done so much more. And I look forward to the future of DCU, but looking at the past, I'm not really that hopeful. And listen, if you're a Superman fan, I would say go see this movie for yourself. You'll probably like it as a Superman fan. But for me, man, if you're not a Superman fan, if you're not hyped about it, just wait for it to come out on Netflix, man. Because it's just one of those movies that, you know, in a couple years from now, you're going to see on TBS and TNT every weekend. You know, that's kind of what this movie reminds me of. It's just another comic book, you know, special effects extravaganza that kind of falls a little flat. And that's all I can say about it. I think I said all I can say about it, and hopefully you guys enjoyed it. I didn't mind it. To me, it was just another, like I said, it's just another comic book movie. It wasn't special. It had its good moments, but other than that, just another Superman movie. So thanks for watching, guys. Leave your comments in the comment section. Please do not leave any hate comments. I've been receiving a lot of them over the past week. And I just want to thank you guys for watching. Bye.